loaded with relief items. We are already on this side of the border with thousands of tents, and as you can see, a camp is being set up and being increased the capacity. So we will be ready and we will be here as long as the need is there. We are not present at the other side of the border, so we don't have much information. However, the flow of persons throughout the past days have significantly reduced comparing the last week. Last week, we've had more than 10 to 15,000 persons crossing every day. At one point, we had 14,000 crossing in 12 hours. Right now, the average is 2,000 to 3,000. But this is not an indication that everything is good. We are not out of the woods yet, and when this emergency happened last week, it happened out of the sudden. So there is a likelihood that we will go back to that situation. That's why we're here and we're ready.
And you mentioned a number of Bangladeshi people who are arriving there at the border. I mean, what is the mix of nationalities that you have there? Are they mostly expatriates? Are they Libyan? Who's arriving there?
The vast majority of the people who arrived in the total period of time are Egyptians. Nationalities were number 2 nationality, now they're number 1. There are people from Vietnam, there are people from all countries in Asia. Mainly they are migrant workers, middle-aged men who used to work in Libya and then fled or left Libya after violence broke out. But right now we have different nationalities. There are Libyans, but Libyans are not staying here in the camp. Most likely they are going inside the Tunisian community. And there are all kinds of nationalities from Africa, from Mali, Niger, several Arabic nationalities as well, and people from East Asia. But the numbers for now in the camp, around 13,500 persons are from Bangladesh. So they are the majority of the people you see around me right now.
Thank you for that, Firas Kayal from the UNHCR. The government in China has tightened controls on foreign media and stepped up security in Beijing and Shanghai, following calls for pro-democracy protests. Security forces kept a close watch over Beijing's Tiananmen Square and possible protest sites in a bustling shopping district. The calls for demonstrations have been inspired by the uprisings in the Middle East. Meanwhile, protesters in Hong Kong have taken to the streets again to support the so-called Jasmine movement. Rob McBride reports.
A tiny protest with big hopes. A handful of activists, outnumbered at least 10 to 1 by police, turning up in support of China's Jasmine movement. It was an even smaller turnout than the week before. Then the confrontation with police angrier, with protesters vowing to continue indefinitely despite their number.
But we will come here every Sunday in support of the Jasmine movement in China. Actually, we are all prepared to be arrested.
In mainland China, with the opening of the National People's Congress and the leadership vowing to maintain stability at all costs, activists there face an almost impossible task to organize any meaningful protests. A heavy security clampdown in the streets and in cyberspace will see to that. Allowed to protest here in Hong Kong, activists in this well-connected city are also free to use as many online tools as their fingers will allow in their continuing campaign. Fanning Yim is in touch with 10 activists in mainland China, tweeting their news onto 1,000 other people.
It's basically 2 types of news: activists who have been detained, and then also dates, times, and venues of Jasmine Revolution gatherings.
An online community quietly hacking away at the system.
There are lots of restrictions in China, but there are also lots of hackers in China. And therefore, they are smart and they know how to gain the information beyond the state control.
Activists here say their campaign is different to the Middle East, insisting their long, slow approach will eventually take hold. But as this protest ended for another week, the numbers are so small it's sometimes hard to see any movement at all. Rob McBride, AlJazeera, Hong Kong.
A magnitude 6.3 earthquake has hit northern Chile. The U.S. Geological Survey says that the quake struck around 60 kilometers east of the town of Arica at a depth of 120 kilometers. Getting those geckos will take you on a night hunt in Indonesia That's coming up. And as England find themselves involved in another thriller at cricket's World Cup, we'll find out if South Africa can hold their nerve with Andy and all the sports news next.
You don't fight threats, you fight enemies.
Our core function remains the territorial defense of our populations and our member states.
Sanctions, do you think they will work?
A huge number of Western forces have not made huge progress.
The public no longer even believes that, we are there because we are building democracy.
Our empire is imploding. It itself is an illusion.
Empire with Marwan Bashar on Al Jazeera.
What Gaddafi has done, he dismantled or destroyed the system in the country.
As chaos and violence sweep across Libya.
They're living through fear, they're living through a nightmare.
They're using ammunition, live ammunition.
Al Jazeera hears from those who have lived in fear of Gaddafi's regime.
We don't want him to leave. We want to arrest him. 42 years is too much.
Libya, a state of terror. At this time on Al Jazeera. A history of guerrilla warfare. A place on the global stage. They were an organization created for a stateless population. But before fighting for their land, why did the PLO fight for independence from their Arab neighbors? Chronicling the turbulent story of the struggle for a Palestinian homeland. PLO, History of a Revolution, at this time on Al Jazeera.
Andy's here with all the sport then, and England at last seem to have found their groove.
Yeah, and South Africa finding yet another way of losing a tight game at a World Cup. Good to see. England have been involved in another thrilling match at cricket's World Cup. This time out, they finished up as the winners. South Africa in complete control of this match for long periods, but an inspired bowling performance eventually saw England win by just 6 runs in Chennai. Joanna Gazarowska reports.
South Africa and their fans have been enjoying their moment in the sun at this Cricket World Cup. With 2 wins from 2, they'd emerged as strong contenders for the title. And their confidence would have been boosted further as they took on England, when Robin Peterson dismissed both the England openers in the first over. Skipper Strauss went for a duck, before Peterson removed his namesake, Kevin Peterson, for just 2 runs. England had come into this match having suffered a shock defeat to Ireland, and Jonathan Trott and Ravi Bopara weren't about to let it happen again, as both made half-centuries. But Imran Tahir stopped them in their tracks. The spinner took 4 wickets, taking his tournament tally to 11, as England were all out for what seemed to be a paltry 171. South Africa managed to reach 63 before their first wicket fell,